Well, I was just gonna bring up the spider webs again.
Yeah.
Yeah, a spider web is gonna get right in front of it. Sometimes it looks like you even have a scratch on the lens because it just looks so horrible right in front of there.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches Roundtable. This is one of our problem solution series, and this one we're going to be talking about a pretty important topic, and that is night vision quality. I think when people are coming to us and they're looking for new cameras, that's one of their major things they want to get here. And I've got no better person to talk about that. Who's seen how many night vision camera feeds you think you've seen? Hundreds
Oh
and hundreds
God,
and hundreds.
thousands
Michael
and
Bell,
thousands.
yeah, Michael Bell, our support manager here.
Hey
And we're going
guys.
to go through four different solutions for this, ranging from adjustments to cleaning and everything in between. So let's just jump right into it and talk about kind of the solution number one we're recommending, which is like the physical placement, right? How many of these IR issues, when people have IR issues, is it, is it just because they pointed the camera too much near the wall, or is the eaves is getting it and it's, too bright,
Oh yeah,
overexposed in one area? Like very common issue, right?
absolutely. Yeah, what you're talking about there is IR bounce back, and really what's happening is, the at night the lens is going into that night mode, so you're getting that black and white image, but then you have the red lights come on, which is your infrared, and that is trying its best to flood the area with that infrared light. And if something is too close to that, it's going to just reflect all of that infrared light back into the lens. So everything else that you see past that, it honestly looks black. It looks so dark that you can't make any detail at all. So infrared bounce back, that is a killer of these cameras or any nighttime view, pretty much, really.
Yeah. And the way to think about infrared light for anybody who's not aware, maybe looking for their camera for the first time, it's essentially an invisible flashlight, right? And
Hmm.
wherever you point that camera, the infrared is on the camera. Imagine you got like a flashlight and you put half that flashlight onto the building and then the other half in the alleyway. You're probably not going to see as much of the alleyway as you would if you pointed that flashlight inside the alley completely instead of wasting it on the building, right? So
Yep.
um so when you are actually installing these cameras, it's important to know, like most of the time, obviously people install these cameras during the day. It's a little harder to see that, but just kind of keep in mind if you're looking at the view there and you see that a good portion of your view is looking at the wall, or you can kind of just physically look at the lens and see where it's pointing. And if it's pointing more towards a wall or something like that, you may need to physically actually move that camera, and just a small adjustment can go from a night vision image that's not great to a night vision image that looks great. And
Yeah,
so,
I actually have a perfect example of my own from my house. I have a Warrior 8 on the back side of my house under the eave, and I just, put it right to the eave, ran the wires and everything, and I was having infrared bounce back. I couldn't see anything back there besides the eave itself, or the soffit, sorry. So the soffit, and what I did is just I bought a electrical mounting box, and just that, what, inch and a half,
yeah,
just
somewhere
that
around.
much, just to bring it down that much, just got rid of the entire bounce back, and that worked out perfectly for me.
That's a great point. The mounting boxes are obviously great. We have a video on that too that will be in the description, but they're great for keeping all your cables secure and everything
Mhm,
like that. But they're also great just to give you that, just enough off that wall, give you a little bit more freedom to point it. So,
mhm.
um, one last thing on this before we kind of move on. And I will say one thing about, like, obviously you want all of your infrared in the area where you want to be able to see things. And that also involves like pointing the camera downwards a little bit more, or depending on how far you're looking, maybe a little up. So it just really depends. Look at once you install your security camera systems, look at the night vision footage so you know kind of what you're getting pretty early and what adjustments you need to make. Because a small adjustment, like we said, night and day difference. So,
Absolutely.
and I there are some settings too. I don't know if we need to go too deep into it, but like, you can do like BLC, which is like backlight compensation, and kind of make it to where the darker areas are more exposed and everything like that. But then your other side there is going to be way too bright. So, it's more about physical movement than anything. And if you need advice on that too, like if you're in that situation where maybe the night vision isn't great, um, or you think it could be better, what can they do? They can reach out to your team. They can look at it and you're
Absolutely.
advice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can do a remote session. You can share it with us temporarily, or you can just send in a screenshot. That's perfect. Support at getacw.com. let me know what it looks like and I'll be happy to give you suggestions on ways to fix it.
Yeah, perfect. So I think like when we talk about pros and cons of actually physically adjusting the camera, I think the pros are that it could really completely change the image. I do think the only con that I can think of is that yeah, you're gonna have to get up on a ladder and move that thing, right?
Yeah, that's
That's
usually,
it.
most people's not necessarily gripe or anything like that. It's just sometimes it's fear, some people are just aren't comfortable up on a ladder, especially when you get really, really high.
Yeah. Or even the other potential downside to that is, and this is why playing it out kind of ahead of time is important. Let's just say you rented a cherry lift or something like that, and
Yep.
you realize you got a bunch of IR balance back. You may have to get that cherry lift back out there to actually adjust that. So, make sure you check it as soon as you possibly can at night to make sure it is good. But yeah, that's the only con is you are physically going to have to move it unless you have a PTZ or something like that, and then of course you can remotely adjust it. But yeah, number 2 is kind of in a similar thing, right? So if you've had your cameras for a while and you thought, "Hey, when I first got these cameras, they were great, and now just don't look as good as they are when I first got them." What could be a possible reason for that?
The problem is that once you get something on that dome, springtime is the worst, and we just got through spring, so we just got through with a lot of these calls. Pollen is getting on that dome. A little bit of
Yeah,
dirt is getting on that dome. The infrared is on this side of the dome, so when it's turning on at night, it's illuminating everything that's on the dome itself.
yeah.
It's time to clean your domes.
So
Is
yeah, that
really what that's telling you.
yeah, so
It's
that
just time to clean it, and then it's going to look great again. But sometimes it's enough for people to get away from something like the sheriff into something like a deputy or a warrior that has no dome on it, and the lens and the infrared are completely separated within the camera face itself.
and yeah, the crux of everything there, the second solution really is potentially you need to clean your cameras, right? Especially if they've been
Yes.
outside and they're in a dirty area or just even just in like you mentioned, pollen, dust, rain, rain spots on there, acid rain can all contribute to getting on top of the lens. And as Michael mentioned, the domes are a little bit more susceptible to that being an issue because the lens, as you can see here on like this bullet camera, is separate from the infrared. So like, yeah, you don't want to get dirt and dust on any camera, right? Because it is going to potentially limit how much actually gets out of there. But on the dome, they have to go through one unified piece, the dome. And when that happens, that IR actually can bounce back into it, which can further um, damage the infrared's kind of effectiveness. So it could be again like a major difference, especially some of the other things that can cause like a dirty camera, spider webs, just any of that
Well,
kind of
just
stuff.
insects at
Breathe.
night.
Yeah,
Insects getting close, and then I mean,
dying and
yep, and crawling all over your cameras and getting whatever they want all over your camera lens. Are you kidding?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we've even seen like where bees are starting nests in front of cameras and everything like that. Obviously, that kind of stuff is going to affect it. But the other places where this could be, we think outside as far as that. But if you're in an area like a kitchen, for example, you're going to get grease on those
Yep.
cameras, and that is going to be something that you're going to need to get off to improve your night vision quality. That's going to be. I mean, this even goes into the installation side of things a little bit. Usually this happens over time where things get worse because things start to go on top of it and everything. But like you can be in a situation where when you're installing that dome, you want to make sure that you're not getting fingerprints and grease and stuff from your hands on that dome as well, because that can have this very similar effect. So, um,
Oh, what's even worse is getting it on the inside of the dome and not realizing
yeah,
it. You can clean
yeah,
the outside of that dome over and over and over again, and the entire time you just got a greasy fingerprint right in the lens's way on the inside of the dome itself. And I'm guilty of that myself. So
yeah. A lot of professional installers, well, they might even wear gloves when they're installing some domes just to be that extra level of care. But yeah, if you are a do-it-yourselfer and maybe it's the first time you've installed a dome camera, just do be aware, keep the fingerprints away from any part of the dome, glass, polycarbonate, whatever it is, um, piece of it, because that will affect your night vision too. So, um,
I
anything
did
else you
have
think about cleaning? How do we clean them? Like what do we use any products on it? Like what should we do?
from the support perspective, distilled water and a microfiber cloth. Um, I don't know if you have hard water at your house, but I do at mine. Even if I just rinse off my car with the hose outside, I'll get those little spots when
Mhm.
it dries, those hard water spots all over my windshield. Drives me crazy. That'll go on my lens if I just
Yeah.
hose it off with the water hose. So it's kind of the same thing. Use a little bit of distilled water. If you don't have distilled water, a little bit of vinegar, just a little bit of vinegar and some water and nice clean microfiber cloth to wipe it dry after you wash it down. Um, one other one that I wanted to comment on about somebody who was a customer that we've had that was having to clean a lot. They had a camera that was low on near the ground trying to pick up license plates. And it was a muddy area right below it. So anytime it rained, mud just splattered all over that thing. So they were having to clean that thing constantly. So if you have a similar situation, try to make sure that you have some kind of gravel or something right below where the camera is just to stop that mud from splashing up.
Good, really good point. Yeah. And I think to the effect about cleaning it too, yeah, you don't have to use any crazy chemicals. Don't I wouldn't recommend Windex. I know a lot of people are like, "Whoa, Windex, right? It's Windows." Like, no, don't. I wouldn't personally use that. And then the other thing you mentioned, the most key thing I think of all of it is a clean microfiber cloth. Don't
Yep.
grab one that you just wash your car with that has grit and dirt on them because you can scratch the lens. You can scratch the infrared. If you get and you push down, you grate it just like my car detailer friends are out there watching are going to know this that you can easily scratch a car if you have a dirty microfiber cloth too. So do be very careful that it's a nice clean one. That I also completely agree. A little bit of distilled water is exactly what you want. So what are the pros and
Oh,
cons of cleaning it really? Or do you have more?
well, I was just gonna bring up the spider webs again.
Yeah.
Yeah, a spider web is gonna get right in front of it. Sometimes it looks like you even have a scratch on the lens because it just looks so horrible right in front of there. I was just gonna say things, sometimes certain scents will help keep certain insects away and things like
Yeah.
that. Peppermint oil is one of
Yeah.
them,
Heard
so you
that.
could
Yeah.
put a little bit there just to try to keep that away. It's nature. The cameras are outside. There's only
Yeah.
so much that you can do. So, do your best
Yeah.
is really what I would suggest, but sometimes you
Yeah.
just can't help it.
Yeah, let's wrap up the cleaning side of it. And can you think of any like con to this outside again that you do have to probably get on a ladder and you
No.
know, yeah, so
I'm
it's the
sorry. I like
time-based thing.
I like my electronics to work and work right. So, having a clean lens, I don't mind it. Once or twice a year,
Yeah.
that's usually all it takes, unless you're in a really dusty area and you're using dome cameras, our,
Yeah.
our desert friends.
Yeah.
You get that inversion going, and guess what? It's time to clean those cameras as soon as it rains the first time.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think there really isn't too many. This is just something you have to dedicate the time to. That's the biggest con. You have to kind of make sure, put a calendar reminder. Hey, once every 6 months, clean the camera,
Yep.
and then you can do it when you have time, when the weather's right, etc. Maybe do it slightly after spring and a little bit after
After the
fall,
fall.
maybe something like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
because then you get winter's usually okay. There's not a lot of bugs and stuff. So. Um, and yeah, and then if you've cleaned your camera, you made sure the infrared is right there, and you don't think it's either of those, then what's another possible solution to help improve night vision?
Oh, ambient lighting.
Yeah,
Anytime you can add additional lighting to the area, it'll help out tremendously. So just the tiniest bit of light can do a lot, honestly.
yeah. And cameras are just like our eyes, right? The more light you give them, the easier it is going to be able to see things. So I'm sure we've all had our smartphone and we try to take a picture at night and it gets all blurry and everything like that. The cameras are really function the same way. So Um, this gets into like if you're especially in a commercial environment, lighting is a really important thing that we mention all the time about deterring theft, vandalism, etc. Because people don't want to go to a facility that has bright lights everywhere typically. They want to be in a place where there can somebody from the road's not going to be able to see them, right? They're going to be kind of shadowy in there and everything like that. So installing better ambient lighting around your facility is going to not just improve the way the cameras see at night vision. A lot of times you get decent lighting, they're going to be color all night, which is really awesome because then you can see blue shirt and whatever. You can get color details that you can't with infrared.
Yep.
But also it's going to act as a deterrent and make it less likely, most likely, that you're going to be, the one that's probably a victim compared to somebody who has a darker facility or something like that.
Oh
So,
yeah.
um, when we talk about ambient lighting too, we're talking about lighting in your parking lot, lighting in around the facility, and back alleyways, and everything like that. Um, What other types of and that's kind of obvious. People understand white lights and everything like that. But what about, we mentioned this before we get on, infrared um, versions
Oh
of
yeah,
that?
absolutely. Adding infrared lighting around the area that you can't see. You know, it's invisible to you other than the red LEDs. So you can add floodlights and just point those in the areas that you need a little bit of help with extra lighting.
Yeah.
And you're
The,
not going to see it. That's the best part. You're not going to be affected by it.
so the pros and cons of like extra lighting is, the extra lighting, the pros of it is that we just mentioned it's going to improve your night vision quality, give you potentially color night vision all night with color details and everything. And it also can act as a really good deterrence. Now,
Mhm.
the con of it is that there are some facilities, so like, I mean, that don't want lighting in there. And just depending on, they just, for whatever reason, they can't have it, don't want it. Even more secure facilities potentially even have that where the night vision gap is there as like a deterrence in itself sometimes, but the other con of it, of course, is the extra expense. If you're going in, you're putting lighting everywhere in your facility, that's not going to come free. You might have to hire electricians, run wiring, and all this kind of stuff. And then the fact that it is visible if you are using white light. But I think that, you can kind of put that pro in the category as there are infrared ones out there too. So, um, yeah, I think that puts a kind of a button on that one. I think the last one really is, not all cameras are created equal when it comes to night vision, right? Some of them are okay with it. There's so many different specs, but really it comes down to like looking at a better low light camera, right?
Right.
Um, what are some features of low light cameras that do make them better for night vision?
Just the simple fact that you can get like color night vision.
Yeah,
And I struggle to say that because it's some companies use it as a gimmick to like try to pull in customers and things like that. But there are certain cameras out there, then we carry a few that have just they're just a better camera. They have a better lens in them, and they're able to allow in more light at a lower level than your average camera. So you
yeah,
can just still see at night. And just another situation that I've had before, we have some customers who are in the scientific community and they need no light at all for some of
yeah.
their instruments. And their instruments light up, but that's okay for what they need, but they don't need any additional lighting. And they use some of our best cameras in situations like that.
Yeah. And to give like an example, our standard fixed lens, or our, not necessarily just standard, but it is our most commonly sold 4K fixed lens camera. We call it the Warrior 8.0 V3, and that's got some pretty cool low light features, which we'll talk about in a second. But in terms of actual just camera specs, so when we talk about the lens, the sensor, everything like that, the next step up is something called the Viking, which is a varifocal camera, and that does have a much better, it has a bigger lens on it, so the lens lets in more light. Has a bigger sensor, so it lets in better light, and it deals with it better and everything like that. So like, somebody is going, hey, night vision quality is one of my key things. We may want to stick the Viking in that situation versus say just a standard
Yep,
Warrior, and that does come with cost. Obviously, these more there's some very specific like the Archer again, like that's another one that's like our varifocal 2 megapixel, probably one of our best low light cameras, period.
absolutely.
But that comes with an additional cost too. There's some complexity there, and um, but yeah, that's the biggest thing. You have to kind of start if night vision is one of your most important features that you need, and you're building up a new system. You really want to point out the key areas so that the person building up your system can choose the right models there. And I think the vast majority of people are pretty satisfied with like the standard night vision of most of our cameras. It's still very good,
I
but there
think
are
so
just certain
too.
areas where you might just need a little bit more, and you don't want to put white lights on and or anything like that. But
Yeah, the low light, it definitely shortens the length that you can get from the camera to whatever object it is you're trying to pick up, because the farther away, the less light you're getting. So that really comes into effect. I mean,
yeah, that's one of
don't
the key specs, the infrared range, right? Because you're
yeah,
dealing with some cameras have 100 feet, some cameras have 50 feet, some cameras have less than that, some cameras have no infrared, we have ones that are 500 feet away, right? So
yep,
that's going to play another factor if you have like a long range target, like you're trying to get an entranceway that's 300 feet away from the building. You might be able to see it pretty well with one of our models, but you may not have the infrared range at night to be able to, so the day looks good, but night you just don't have that range. And if you don't have lighting there at the entranceway, you're going to have issues. So,
Yep.
Really good point there. That's one of the specs you definitely want to look at. Um, what about some other specs? Like one of the coolest things I think on our some of our models too is the fact that we also have built-in white light on some of them too, in terms of
Yeah,
the infrared and white light. There's sort of two modes for it, right?
there is. So we have an active deterrent side of it, and then at night when the camera goes into night mode, it'll do like a solid light. Some people are using as I want to do the quotes of motion sensing, but it's not really sensing motion. It's sensing like a person within a certain area or something like
Yeah.
that. It's not like,
Analytics, yeah.
yeah, it's using the AI stuff. But then, during the day, you can set it to where it'll flash. So at night, it'll come on when something comes into that box. It'll just do a nice white solid light. During the day, it'll flash. And
Yeah.
there's also audio that you can do. And I think we did a whole another video
Yeah, we did.
that
And
you might want to link.
we just had a great example of our active deterrence we had actually at
Yeah.
our facility here. So
Uh,
that
but
you guys can
but
see
yeah, you
now.
can use it as an active deterrent, or you can use it to help you around your facility or your house or something like that. So just light up a walkway when you come into a particular area.
Yeah, and like the white light has like, we said the first mode is sort of the active deterrence mode, or like so it will turn on at night and stay solid. So that way, again, it acts as like a scare tactic to them, but also I can see that, hey, this guy's wearing a blue shirt or whatever. So it's like it's two benefits in one almost. And then the other mode that it can do is like instead of using infrared as night vision, um, it will actually turn it on and keep it on all night if you want to do
Yep.
something like that. Some people prefer just having that color all night, and that's an option for that camera too. So that's another function that, as you're looking at cameras that you may want to look into, some cameras have built-in white light, whether it's more based on the event, like the first one we mentioned, or if it's just constant. That's going to be up to some people. Some people are fine and they want the white light everywhere because they want it to be obvious where the things are. And some people want it to be, for neighbors or whatever situation that you don't want white light on. It's just on. It just turns on when it's needed, not 24/7, I should say.
Right.
So
And it's a good way to help out other cameras in the area as well.
yeah.
If you got a few cameras that kind of look towards the same general direction, one over here, one over here, this one right here in the middle, it's these two are lighting up. This one's picking up everything that they're lighting up.
Yeah. And yeah, so there's a lot to this. I think one of the things I would mention is like, can the camera provider give you some decent night vision footage? I think that's one of the things that's, you go to a lot of sites and every camera manufacturer goes, oh, our cameras are great in low light and everything like that. And you may see like do they actually show you real footage? Do they actually show you screenshots or videos or anything like that? Or is it more of like a mock-up of what it's supposed to look like? And if they can't provide those, especially in like a low light scenario, like try to understand like where you're going to put it on. Some you can put like any camera in a very well lit parking lot and it's going to do okay at night because you got all that lighting. But if you're looking at make sure the video content itself, I would say, is in a similar situation to you, right? That you are in that low light scenario and everything. So that's another kind of factor with this too, is it is a little bit hard to what is truly a low light camera. The specs and stuff like that aren't always obvious. They can be sort of spoof. Lux is one of those that, is kind of subjective. We have articles like that on our website that sort of go into detail on that. But so that's one of the difficulties in picking the right camera is making sure it is actually low light and it's not just a marketing gimmick kind of thing. So
Right.
um, anything else you want to add to like camera or new camera selection?
Not too much. Yeah, I mean, the only one that comes to mind is the Watchkeeper Dual Vision. It's got both the IR and the white light on the fixed lens, and then the IR on the PTZ portion of it. So that
That's
one's
really
pretty
good.
cool in that aspect. Yeah, I mean, I think we covered pretty much everything.
But yeah, I think that's a good wrap on this. And I think the pros of this, like when you're considering obviously getting a better light low light camera, you're going to get better low light performance. You're going to get new
Yep.
features. You're going to get better like we can go on about just getting a new camera in general, especially if you already have a system and what those benefits are. We just mentioned like the analytics side, being able to detect that that's a person and turn on the light versus anytime that a bug comes in front of it, turning on the light or
Yep.
something like that. There's so many benefits, but the con here is if you already have cameras and you're trying to improve it, that obviously there's a cost to buying new cameras. There's maybe some complexity in getting those new cameras to work with your maybe old system, especially if you have an old system. So and then if you
Oh
are
yeah, you got to be careful with there because the AI stuff's not going to work with an older
yeah,
NVR.
So there are some considerations with it. The other side of it too is that if you are in a situation where you're trying to potentially buy a brand new system and you're building on it for a new facility, is that getting a true low light camera is probably going to cost more than your standard general surveillance camera. That's just something you have to keep in mind. So um, yeah, any final thoughts on night vision in general? Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that pretty much covered everything. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can say now that I've been in the business for a few years, the technology has gotten better.
yeah.
From when I first started till now, the lighting, the infrared lighting is just getting better and better, and now the introduction of things like white light, that's just cherry on top, pretty much.
Yeah, the sensors are so much better than they were
So much
10
better.
years ago, and you can
Yep,
even see that with your phone, right? You go back to I remember just looking at, like, phone pictures from, like, 2016, and I'm like,
yep,
"God, these things were terrible at night." Like, it barely
yep.
see what I'm looking at, and now, based on both sensors and software and all this kind of stuff that, you can actually use your phone and take pictures at night without having a flash on and stuff like which you couldn't do 5 or 6 years ago, so, um
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think, one of the things I would wrap up with here is just if you have any questions, comments, or if you're thinking about getting a new system or you're having some night vision struggles, reach out to us, reach out to our security experts on the sales team, support team if you've already got a current system. And we'll guide you through. We'll be able to, like Michael mentioned earlier, be able to look at things, see if you want to share that with us, we will be able to see, give you some advice, let you know what possibly the issue is, potentially even tweak some settings and stuff like that that you can go into. But yeah, just reach out to us. We're there to help you and to be able to make sure your system is operating as great as possible. And that being said, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for watching.
Bye, guys. Clean those lenses.